Today's poem is by the late Jake Adam York. It's called Abide. It's the title poem from his final book, published in 2013. Abide. Forgive me if I forget, with the bird's song and the day's last glow folding into the hands of the trees. Forgive me the few syllables, the autumn crickets, the year's last firefly winking like a penny in the shoulder's weeds. If I forget the hour, if I forget the day as the evening star pours out its whiskey over the gravel and asphalt I've walked for years alone, if I startle when you put your hand in mine, if I wonder how long your light has taken to reach me here. Abide. One more time. Forgive me if I forget, with the bird song and the day's last glow folding into the hands of the trees. Forgive me the few syllables of the autumn crickets, the year's last firefly winking like a penny in the shoulder's weeds. If I forget the hour, if I forget the day as the evening star pours out its whiskey over the gravel and asphalt I've walked for years alone. If I startle when you put your hand in mine, if I wonder how long your light has taken to reach me here. Fabulous poem. So let's take a comfortable seat. Jake's poem is all about abiding in where you are and remembering all the things that you don't see. So let's commit today to doing that for this half an hour. Feet flat on the ground. Lengthening the neck and straightening your back. Closing the eyes or half closing them, however you feel comfortable. Be just laying your hands upward on your lap. And then easing into the breathing. Three counts in. Four counts out. And four counts in. Six counts out. Just climbing the tree a little higher. Ever to the point where it gets into an uncomfortable zone, but just so that you can see farther from that vantage. Feel your mind wandering. What you're doing is witnessing your thoughts or naming how you feel. And that's actually the point of the meditation. And then softening the shoulders. Softening the belly. I was sharing with someone yesterday about how the world feels clenched. Everything just a little bit more rigidly clenched against what might happen and what's happening. And it almost feels strange to soften amidst all of that. And you enter the world like a hermit crab who's grown out of its shell. But you're actually too big for the old shell. And just for a few more minutes, stay soft and gentle in the midst of all that clenching. Soften the shoulders again. Soften the belly. Relax the hands. This is the difference between what Mary Oliver calls breaking and breaking open. Bringing the breath back to about 3 counts in, 4 counts out. For one minute. Abide by Jake Adam York. Forgive me if I forget with the bird song and the day's last glow folding into the hands of the trees. Forgive me the few syllables of the autumn crickets, the year's last firefly winking like a penny in the shoulder's weeds. If I forget the hour, if I forget the day as the evening star pours out its whiskey over the gravel and asphalt I've walked for years alone. If I startle when you put your hand in mine, if I wonder how long your light has taken to reach me here. Jake. Jake was my beautiful friend. We met in Colorado 25 years ago or so. And we were very close for about 13 years until his death. He died at 40, very suddenly. And it was a great loss to our poetry communities. He was a star, and his star was just beginning to rise. He had written a series of books about civil rights martyrs, as he called them, and had hoped to spend his career talking about the lives and the sacrifices of those communities in the 1950s and 60s. Individuals like Emmett Till and then Martin Luther King and all the others who suffered, sacrificed, and even died during that period. He was an amazing man. This is the title poem of his final book, Abide. And it's a poem that uses one of those highly charged spiritual words I spoke of last week. Forgive me. Forgive me for what, I guess, is the first question. Forgive me for not noticing, is all that this poem seems to be saying. And it's everything. It's a poem about perception. It's about the way we think the world is, the way we often see what we think we're going to see. And it's about forgetting that you're not here among this light, among this winking firefly, among the weeds on the shoulder of the road, or this winking sunrise arc way out in the sky at the beginning of time. And it's about the lack of a capacity to imagine other outcomes. Forgive me if I startle at the touch of your hand. after so many years alone. I like the word abide too, because abide is a command in this poem to have this presence and this awakeness, this awareness live in me. Abide in me, please. A sense of clarity, a sense of vision, however you want to say it, clear seeing, or just a readiness to actually see what's here and what's coming and what's arrived. So I grew up Catholic, and my mother, when something was lost, if I lost my hat or my glove or a scarf or something like that, my mother would say the prayer to Saint Anthony, who was in this version of the saint a little child. And the prayer was, "Little Saint Anthony, please look around. Something is lost and needs to be found." And so Saint Anthony was the little child saint of lost things. And I think that it's fitting that it's a child who can find the lost things, because children are not suffering from what I'm describing here. Children, unlike us, are able to see the obvious because they see with fresh eyes, they see with new eyes. So in a way, Jake's poem is a little bit like saying, forgive me for not seeing with the eyes of a child who knows the obvious. Look at that firefly. Look at the whiskey of light. Look at where we are. Look at how much fun we're having. Forgive me if I've grown so old that I can't remember that. And I guess the last thing I'll say about the poem is that it's a poem about perception. Perception is one of the 5 aggregates in Buddhist thinking. The 5 aggregates are the coils that I spoke of in the Rilke poem last year. The coils that create this false self, the many layers of thoughts and emotions and the scars that the world leaves on you, and even this individual consciousness, but also perceptions, which have to do with the way we see the world. And Thich Nhat Hanh tells the greatest story about what perception is, and it involves this skiff driver on a river, and he sees this boat coming at him, and he starts waving his arms and saying, "Hey, look out, I'm right here, you're coming right for me." And this boat just continues, and the skiff driver is getting angrier and angrier and yelling at the captain of the boat, trying to wave so that he can catch his attention. And the boat finally crashes into the skiff, and he's out of his mind with anger until he looks into the boat and sees that there's nobody there. It's a boat that has lost its mooring and floated down the river and crashed accidentally into him. And he starts to laugh. And that's the moment where perception, in the way that we think the world is, turns into an awareness of what the world actually is. Perception breaks open into this remembering where we are and who we are and how things really are. So he ends that teaching with the question, always ask yourself, are you sure? Are you sure? When you make an assessment of the world or the people around you or how your day is going, are you sure? It's one of the most spiritual questions that I can ask myself. And it's so helpful to me. Are you sure? So let's go into the second half of the meditation. Closing your eyes or keeping them half closed. Lengthening the breath again. Lengthening the neck softening your shoulders, getting into that vulnerable space just for a moment. It's the space of a child who can see the obvious. This is the body language of the child who knows he can find the lost things that the adults can't find. That's why Charles Simic says the obvious is difficult to see. The obvious is difficult to see. So here's the question. What have you been so sure about that keeps you from seeing the obvious things? You might say, people hate me at my job. Are you sure? Or you might say, I'm alone. I'm completely alone. Are you sure? Or in that trance of unworthiness that Tara Brach talks about, you might say, I am a terrible person. Are you sure? Strip away the parts down to the seed of that thought, the root cause of that thought. Ask yourself, are you sure? Thich Nhat Hanh says that a Buddha is just a person who lives in joy and freedom without fear or attachment. That seems to be all that's required. And it seems so connected to this question. Person who lives in joy and freedom without fear or attachment. A child is someone who sees through the lens of the heart. Till the clenched world gets hold of them. But until then, they can see through the lens of the heart. the last couple of minutes here, maintaining that posture of awareness. The stiffness of thinking will know what happened. Just let the shoulders fall. A Quaker writer named Isaac Pennington says, "Give over thine own willing. Give over thine own running. Give over thine own desiring to know or be anything, and sink down to the seed that God sows in your heart. And let that grow in thee, and be in thee, and breathe in thee, and act in thee." Out of that, you can't help but have this spontaneous response to the world, like in Jake's poem. Out of that comes the childlike vision. Here's Jake one more time. God bless this man. He was a beaut. Abide by Jake Adam York. Forgive me if I forget with the bird song and the day's last glow folding into the hands of the trees. Forgive me the few syllables of the autumn crickets, the year's last firefly winking like a penny in the shoulder's weeds. If I forget the hour, if I forget the day as the evening star pours out its whiskey over the gravel and asphalt I've walked for years alone. If I startle when you put your hand in mine. If I wonder how long your light has taken to reach me here. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, David. That was so beautiful. I'm so sorry he's not with us anymore.
Good. Thank you, Susan. And thanks, Fatima.
David.
It's beautiful.
Very beautiful.
I'll make sure that that Pennington poem and all of the other references are included in the newsletter too. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.